Alright, this little video on resizing 4K footage on a HD timeline and stabilizing it from the timeline. If we look at our project settings, which is our standard project settings, you can see that it's 1920 by 1080 at 25 frames a second. This is the start project that we started in the beginning of the course, and we said this is the default one you should start. The most common delivery format is 1080p or HD now, but getting more common is this cameras that will shoot 4K. What this does is it gives us a bit of an option to do some tricky sleight of hand in our edits. Ultra HD or 4K is 2 times the size of HD. Ultra HD is 3840 by 2160 and a HD image is 1920 by 1080 pixels. So it's twice the size of HD. And what this means is you can scale the 4K up twice the size and it will still be as sharp as the HD timeline behind it. And you won't have a noticeable loss in quality. It will be pixel for pixel 1080p. It allows you to reposition your frame and redo the composition or get better composition than what you had when you shot it. So here's an example. There's a HD in the center here. That's the HD window or the size of HD, and the red is 4K. Now what happens is software generally scales the 4K down to fit in the HD window. But you can actually scale it up again to up to twice the size, and you can also move it around in the frame. And what we're looking at is through the blue rectangle, that's the window of our HD project. So we can actually reposition our 4K frame somewhere in that window or have it, blown up to its full size. So let's look at a practical demonstration of that. Here's a shot from a music video that we've just done. The gentleman is framed right in the center of the frame. This is not ideal framing. We usually like to go for the thirds or some more creative type framing. In addition, this shot is handheld and you can see that it kind of wobbles around a bit. So this should be a locked off shot and the composition sucks. Okay, so what we can actually do with this frame is we can go up to our inspector if it's not open and we can see zoom here and we can actually increase that to twice the size, 2.0. And what we can see here is that even though we've enlarged this twice the size, it's still sharp because the window that we're looking through is 1080p or HD and our Ultra HD or 4K is twice the size. So we can zoom it twice. We can zoom it anywhere between twice the size and back to its normal size, which is there. And reset that. So this is the 4K scaled down to 1080p, which results in, a nice sharp image, which is good. But we can actually scale it up to some other value like this. Let's say 1.3 or 1.5, for example. So we've scaled it up 50%. And now with our position X and Y, we can actually reframe this and put it more in the position that is a better composition. I think we're too close here. I want to be a bit further out. I'm going to reframe. So now he's sitting on the thirds. We haven't lost any quality in the image and it's looking fine. Okay. So that's how you do it. You take your image and you rescale it and you scale it up. You can scale it up to 2 times without losing any quality. Let's talk about stabilizing from the timeline. So sometimes when you shoot handheld or when you don't have your camera on a tripod, obviously there's going to be some movement in the frame and sometimes that doesn't look so pro. So Resolve has a feature where you can stabilize it in multiple different ways in multiple different pages, but you can actually now stabilize from the timeline. Let's take a shot like this. It's moving around, it's shot across away in a longer lens. It's only short, but what you can see is it kind of moves around a lot. So if we're going to stabilize this, we select the clip, we go up to our inspector, you scroll down this list of things here and you'll come to one that says stabilization. Now as the stabilizer is set up, you're going to get a stabilization which softens the motion that's in the frame. In general, with the mode, perspective is the one to go with, particularly for a wide shot like this. All of these other controls you can leave alone. There's only one other one here called camera lock. Camera lock means it's going to take absolutely every bit of motion out of the frame. But let's just stabilize this as it stands. If we go select the clip and then we go stabilize, you'll see that it runs through the process. And you can see it zoomed a little bit there, which is why this checkbox zoom is on. And what it does is it zooms so it's got a bit of a border that it can move the frame around without showing the edge of the frame, the black. If we play this now, what you'll see is there's still movement there, but it's much softer. It's much easier on the eye. It's not so violent. Now, if you go, well, I'm still not happy with that. I don't like that play. We can reset that, the stabilization. We've got perspective. Let's click camera lock. And what you'll see now, it will zoom so much more because it's having to do much more stabilization. Let's try that. Boom, you can see it's zoomed in quite a bit. But now it doesn't move at all. It doesn't move at all. There's no movement in the frame, and that's because the software has locked that down. So it's zoomed so there's an edge here, and every time the camera went down, the software is pushing the frame up. Every time the camera went left, the software is pushing it right. And so it's counterbalancing all of that stabilization. Let's choose a different one. Here's another one here. There's a slight handheld movement on this. We probably get away with just the standard stabilization here. We'll just hit stabilize. It does it, it zooms slightly, but now what you can see is there's still that roll. There's still that sort of roll at the beginning there. And you go, well, it's much better, and it softens it. It doesn't take all the movement out. But if we click camera lock again and go stabilize again, now it doesn't move at all. Okay, I'll just fit that so you can see it properly. Now it doesn't move at all. Okay. Now, when does this fall apart? It's doing some pretty heavy maths to do the stabilization, and it falls apart when there's some object in the foreground that might be moving and the background is moving because the camera's moving. So let's go back to our other image over here of this dude, and we'll reset the framing here. So here's our shot. Now what you can see here is we've got an object in the middle which is moving, and so the software is looking at that, and also we've got this background which is moving because of the movement of the camera. Let's go to a part where it actually moves a bit like here. So I'll just shorten that. So we've got this bit that's moving and he's moving. So there are ways to mask this off and say only calculate the background, but if we try the stabilization on this, and we'll just go stabilization and stabilize, it should do a half decent job, and you can see it zoomed, half decent job of moving things, softening that motion, all right? And what you can see here, if you look carefully, is a bit of warping and strangeness that's going on here. And this is the software trying to counteract for the movement of both the foreground object and the background. On these shots here, it was really only one background there. You haven't got something right in the middle of the frame, but on this shot, it's more difficult. This is where you can choose other options here. Instead of perspective, we could choose translation, and we could stabilize again and see if it does a better job than the perspective warp did. It looks like it did. There's still a little bit of jiggle there. It's not too bad, not too noticeable, but if I camera lock this sucker, then we might have a problem. I'm going to go stabilize again. You can see it zooms so much more. Can do that because it's 4K, but now there's still movement here. And this is where it's trying to lock down the movement of him and the movement of the background, and it doesn't do a fantastical job here. So on this one here, there are other ways to stabilize in Fusion and other things. You might learn about that in the VFX course, but generally on a shot like this, I would probably just take the slight movement. Instead of camera locking that, turn the camera lock off, I'll stabilize it again. You can see it's a much nicer image. There's only a slight bit of movement. It's not too bad. But just be aware that if you have a shot like this where you've got a very big foreground object and a background, the background is moving because of the camera, the foreground is moving independently. The software trying to figure that out doesn't do a fantastic job. But that's the process. Let's go back to this one. I'm going to reset the stabilization. You can see it zooms out. Okay, there's the handheld shot. I'm going to select the clip. I'm going to choose perspective, which is the default. The default settings are fine, and we hit stabilize. It'll zoom the image, and what you'll see is that motion of the camera is much reduced. It's much smoothed down. If you hate that, you go, I want absolutely everything gone. You click camera lock and stabilize again, and then play it, and it's locked the camera down completely. Okay, so that's stabilization from the timeline and reframing and recomposing your images with a 4K image in a HD timeline.